3 heads has the dragon. But how many legs does it have? I recently got a tattoo of Caraxes from House of the Dragon. Look at him, isn't he adorable? And realized immediately that for the rest of my life, I'm gonna have to endure strangers arguing with me about how many legs dragons are supposed to have. Wait, only 2 legs? Isn't that technically a wyvern?
Technically, that's not a dragon, it's a wyvern.
Fun fact, that's actually a wyvern and not really a dragon. Oh yeah? Says who? People have strong opinions about this, and many assume to speak from a place of authority, which surprises me given that dragons are not real and every incarnation of them is made up. Dragons exist in pretty much all cultural traditions across the world, and an astounding amount of fictional media, from the traditional 4-legged winged fire-breathing drakes of European mythology to wingless, fireless, benevolent Chinese dragons, from the ontologically evil dragons of Tolkien to the cute and friendly dragons of Disney or whatever. All these settings have different meanings of what a dragon is, and to unconditionally apply the rules of one setting to another is farcical. But let's take a step back with however many legs you have and look at dragons broadly first. Okay, dragon, wyvern, drake, what's going on here? Let's quickly deal with the etymology. The word wyvern ultimately derives from Latin vipera, which is also where the word viper comes from. It means snake. The word dragon ultimately comes from ancient Greek, drakon, meaning a serpent of huge size, a python, a dragon. The word drake has the same history and means the same thing, but the word drake, which means a male duck, is completely unrelated and just happens to have the exact same spelling and pronunciation. The myth of a hero slaying a giant serpent exists in almost all Indo-European cultures. For thousands of years, the word dragon and its ancestors have referred to the mythological monster, and it's a monster that has taken many different forms. Sometimes he's exactly what you're thinking of, but sometimes he's just a massive snake with shitloads of teeth. Sometimes he's got 3 heads. Hey, wait a minute. Sometimes he's a goofy little fellow. Sometimes he's tired and doesn't want to go to school that day. And sometimes he's whatever the fuck this is. What's important is there's never been a strict consensus on what exactly a dragon is. Since the Iliad, this exact word has referred to all manner of vaguely reptilian, vaguely monstrous villains or obstacles, and not just the guy on the Welsh flag. To demonstrate this point, I want to hone in on one specific story, St. George and the Dragon. Well, not really the story itself, but depictions of it in art across cultures and centuries. Given that George is highly venerated in both Eastern and Western churches, and his dragon slaying has been a prominent myth in many Christian traditions since at least the 11th century, and almost certainly much earlier. The story goes that St. George saves a princess from a dragon, frees the city the dragon was terrorizing, and refuses the reward he's offered, passing it on to the city's poor. Everyone's so amazed by his heroism and generosity that they convert to Christianity and get baptized, and Jesus throws them all a big pizza party. Despite being the patron saint of England, this is his flag after all. The story appears to have emerged from Georgia, go figure, and was set somewhere in Anatolia or Northern Africa. The moment of George slaying the dragon has been depicted countless times by count fewer people, and being the most prominent and pervasive dragon-based story across European cultures, examining the way it's been rendered over the past 1,000-odd years could show us something about what can be considered a dragon. So here's an extremely non-exhaustive selection of art showing St. George slaying the dragon. Brace yourselves, this is going to be one hell of a slideshow. This 11th century work from modern-day Turkey is widely recognized as the first known depiction of St. George as the dragon slayer. You can see him here with St. Theodore as well. We'll be going through these roughly chronologically. This is a 12th century piece from Greece where you can see George ramming the dragon with his lance. I'm not sure what happened to his head, but I hope he's okay. This one is from 12th century Russia. You can see the dragon is a good boy here. Moving on to the 13th century now, we're in Italy, Verona specifically. basically, and you can see St. George slaying the dragon. We're in 14th century Paris now, and both of these are from a manuscript of the Legenda Aurea, which is a huge collection of legends, and these are both, of course, St. George slaying the dragon. So we're deep into medieval West Europe now. These three are all from 14th century Russia. You'll be beginning to notice some patterns here. This illustrates that there are two main types of depictions of St. George slaying the dragon. There's the concise type, which is just George and the dragon. Then there's the detailed type, which has the princess and the city and the walls and maybe towers as well. This one's from 15th century Crete. Notice the three heads of the dragon. That's cool. This one's from 15th century Georgia, and it's like metal work decorated by enamel held up by gold wire. It's crazy. Look at this. This one's from 15th century Germany, and it's a rare case of George not being on his horse. These two are both 15th century Russia. You can see one's the detailed type, one's the concise type, but they both have the general structure of George on his horse slaying the dragon, which is prone beneath him. This one is a detailed type from 15th century Switzerland, probably. You can see St. George's cross on the ground there. I really like this one. This giant piece from 15th century Bulgaria tells a lot more than just St. George slaying the dragon, but you can clearly see him front and center dominating the dragon. This one's from England. You can tell because of all the St. George's crosses. It's by a French artist though. This one's from 15th century Italy, and it is metal as fuck. Holy shit. This one's also from 15th century Italy. And so is this one, and wow. You can see the lance shattered on the ground there and also impaling the dragon's mouth and neck, and George is like going for the triple kill because he's got his sword. But this one's insane. This one's from 15th century Netherlands, so I guess that's what Dutch dragons look like. This one's 16th century Germany. This one's from the 16th century Netherlands. What is it with Dutch dragon? This one's from Poland. Is that God up in the corner? This one's from Russia. We're back in Crete again, and this time George is slaying the dragon alongside his homeboy Mercurius, who is slaying the Emperor Julian. Still Crete. This one's got a lot going on. Oh my goodness. 16th century Italy here. Just look at some art, man. I don't know. Now we're in the 17th century and things are getting crazy. This one's from Germany, and this one's from Italy, and this one's from 19th century France, and it's so beautiful. Now we're going to jump ahead to 20th century Ethiopia. So this is relatively modern, but still the depiction is like really similar in structure to the medieval depictions. And this one's from 20th century Russia. Thus concludes my tour through the art of St. George slaying the dragon. Why did we do this? As you can see, there's a lot of differences amongst these images, but there's also some striking similarities. Something that's almost entirely consistent is the pose. St. George is almost always a horse, almost always plunging his weapon into the dragon, which is like always prone beneath him. The consistency indicates that pose is really important to depicting the story. You know what isn't important? The dragon's anatomy, at all. It tends to be serpentine, it usually has wings, it might breathe fire, and it has either 2 legs, 4 legs, no legs, or I got lazy and the part of the dragon where the legs would theoretically be is out of frame, so you'll never get to find out. So the pose seems important, but the number of legs the dragon has really doesn't matter, and that's probably because unlike real creatures, there are no hard and fast qualifying characteristics for a dragon. If you tell me I'm looking at an ant, but I can see 8 friggin' legs, I know it's not an ant. That's a sneaky spider. You can't fool me. But if you tell me I'm looking at St. George slaying the dragon, but the dragon hasn't got 4 legs, am I really supposed to march on over to 16th century Crete and lecture Mikhail Damascenos on the anatomy of fictional monsters because I can't make out 4 stompers on the flying lizard? You fucked up, Mikey. That's not St. George. Do you even care about Jesus? And remember, this is the dragon story of Europe. If it doesn't matter in the story of St. George, it shouldn't matter anywhere. Carlo Crivelli didn't give this level of detail to the dragon's genitals just for you to tell him that it's actually a wyvern because it's only got 2 legs. That is a dragon's ballsack. Thank you very much. Oh my god, look at the horse. You could do yoga on those things. I'm surprised George's knackers aren't hanging out too. And that's why my tattoo is still cool. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So, whence the confusion? Where from does this idea that dragons must have 4 legs come? From? What's with the wyvern? Well, you may have noticed that dragons are fucking awesome. The knights and lords of medieval Europe noticed this also, so they started putting dragons on their clothes and shields and so on, so that everyone else knew that they knew dragons are really cool. Heraldry. Now, because the number of legs a dragon has does not matter, they were putting them on with 4 legs, 2 legs, even the rare no legs McGee, which honestly looks rad as fuck. They just took a snake and gave it wings, I guess kinda just to see what would happen. Wyvern was actually the first word used to describe all of these in English heraldry, showing up in the 14th century, with dragon only appearing a century later. But as the Middle Ages went on and heraldry became more codified, the different words took on different meanings. In the 16th century, and in British heraldry alone, dragon strictly meant 4 legs, and wyvern strictly meant 2 legs. And don't get me wrong, those heralds were absolutely cooking sometimes. No, you idiot! The dog has to be in a gold gravy boat on a crown on a helmet on a field with 3 thingies. How else are people gonna know I'm the Count of Liptov? But are you really gonna trust these guys on matters of anatomy? Have you seen what they thought a seahorse looked like? Where are the massive balls? Moreover, most European heraldic traditions never distinguished between large mythical reptilian creatures with 4 legs and large mythical reptilian creatures with 2 legs. They use the same word for both of these things, usually whichever word is analogous to dragon, because again, it doesn't matter. It mattered only if you were in Britain, and only if you were a herald or something, and only if it was the 16th century. To artists and clergymen in Italy, Germany, Greece, Russia, France, even artists in England, it didn't matter how many legs a dragon had. Of course, dragons are not real, and the rules surrounding them are made up. Each fictional setting can be as specific and restrictive as it likes within its own confines. Let's take Dungeons & Dragons as an example, a setting infamous for its rigorous classification. In D&D's Forgotten Realms, a dragon is always an intelligent, magical, 4-legged reptile with wings, and a wyvern is always a 2-legged reptile with wings, rarely magical, and much more primitive and unintelligent, only distantly related to true dragons. Unlike in real-world mythology, such as the story of St. George, in D&D the distinction actually matters because they're completely different creatures, basically, and interacting with them, which is a thing you do in the game, is different. So it makes sense there, but taking D&D's dragon-wyvern distinction and applying it to all other fiction is just as arbitrary and dysfunctional as applying Harry Potter's magic system to all other fiction would be, or complaining that the vampires in What We Do in the Shadows don't sparkle like Edward Cullen does. Moving on. In Tolkien's Middle-earth, dragons are actually quite varied. Glaurung, the father of dragons, had 4 legs and breathed fire, but had no wings. Tolkien's drawings of Smaug give him 4 legs, 2 wings, and an exceedingly noodly body, but Peter Jackson gave Smaug 2 legs and 2 wings, just like Benedict Cumberbatch. Now that's a real dragon. In the Harry Potter films, the common Welsh green has 4 legs and 2 wings, but all the other dragons have 2 legs and wings. In the same universe, there are also wyverns with 2 legs and wings, but they're clearly distinct from dragons. In A Song of Ice and Fire, dragons have 2 legs and wings, but wyverns also exist with the same arrangement of limbs, the distinguishing factor being that wyverns are smaller and can't breathe fire. Hell, if you ask Game Freak, they'll tell you that a fucking coconut tree is a dragon, or a tragically ballsless seahorse. Oh, it's a sea dragon. That's clever. All of these fictions and many others treat the issue of dragon legs separately, and while you may prefer one to the rest, they are all equally valid unto themselves, and the rules of one simply don't apply to any of the others. And if you ask any dictionary or heraldry guide, the first thing they'll tell you about wyverns is that they are a type of dragon, so it doesn't matter. So if someone calls a 2-legged winged reptile monster a dragon, you now know that they are almost always right to do so, and if you correct them, you're not just a pedantic asshole, you're a mistaken pedantic asshole, which is so much worse. Thank you for listening to me whinge about dragon legs. Please do feel free to refer to this video during relevant arguments so you don't have to remember all that stuff about St. George, English heraldry, and dragon testicles. Part 2 of this video is all about dragon legs, specifically in relation to Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and the books they're allegedly based on.